we thought, well, what better way to, meet people outside of, ourselves and our community than to host events. And so when we thought about hosting events, we thought about, well, let's do clinics, like little balance bike clinics. It gives our kids the opportunity to ride at a lot of different tracks because they're kind of getting older now and my content isn't as exciting for them. But if I can, be as a mom, be like, hey guys, we're gonna go on tour and like there's an incentive for you, like you get to ride. And also to get families that maybe their kids don't know how to ride a bike or they've wanted to try BMX, but they've been scared of it because it's kind of intimidating when you see that big, nice track. And so I was like, if we can invite some of our fans or just people in the community and draw them out, it gives me the opportunity to meet them without having a lot of like pressure to put on a show or perform. It's like, dude, you and your bike are going to have a great time today. And I get to be here to help you facilitate that. And those parents just are sweating up a storm when we're running around those tracks. Oh man, when you're chasing your little toddler and stuff.
Yeah.
But
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode.
But Breck, how did the Breck image and character persona come to be?
Yeah. So back when my oldest was younger, I had I wanted to find, every mom wants to find some break here and there to do the dishes and do this. And I had typed in fire truck tour for kids, and one other creator like had shown up, and I was like, oh, that is so cool. I love the idea of showing my son, this 1.5-year-old at the time, a real life tour of a fire truck because I can't just drive over to the fire station right now to show that to him. And I loved it. But over time, there were some things that I was like, oh, I would add this, I would do that as a mom. And as my kids grew up, by the time I had my fourth child, Greta, when she was 6 months old, Miles, my oldest, was now 5 at that time. And I was like, man, I was still, just kind of battling with, YouTube, the YouTube culture. It feels very unsafe and unsettling. I don't just let my kids just get on YouTube and watch anything they want. It's kind of a dangerous place. But I thought, if I can add some like joy and positive content, alongside some other really amazing creators, it just makes me feel good. And I was also a stay-at-home mom, kind of looking for a creative outlet. So Kylan finally said, why don't we just start a channel? Like, I'm good at photography and editing and all these things, so let's just do it. And I was like, I love it. That sounds fun. So it turned into this creative outlet, and I just am so passionate about that 5 and under age. I just absolutely love it. We've grown up in children's church, and Alana, we're both kind of church kids, so we were like just around children all the time. And then of course babysitting and having my own, I just am so passionate about that age. So I was like, man, I just want to be a light in that space. So that's how it started, and we've been loving it. Although my youngest is now 6 years old, and they're still like so supportive, and I just can't let go of that young age. I just love it so much.
Yeah, I'll add that kind of to your point. We had been around kind of children's programming, so even we were the children's ministry directors at the church we were at in the Portland area for a while, and then just always volunteered in different capacities. We both grew up at summer camp. Our parents like ran summer camp, so that's how we met, like at a Christian summer camp.
14 years old.
Yep. And then we like I ran all of the the activities, the low ropes, high ropes, paintball, all that stuff. So a lot of interaction, kind of facilitating those types of events. And then obviously in sports, we're both played our handful of sports. And in Portland area, actually, I was part of a after school kids program as well. So one of my full-time jobs at, at a certain point in my life, one of many, was to actually, I was the director of those programs. So we had summer camps, after school programs, and then we did, like basketball tournaments and stuff for, kids in the Portland area. So a lot of kids activities. And so this was like an accumulation of everything coming together.
Man.
And my background's marketing and kind of content. So it was like, all right, let's try this out. And it was really like getting her an opportunity to like start to kind of exercise something that maybe was more as you were coming out of like the baby phase of being a mom. And it was like, all right, I want to do something. I want to put my hands to something. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's really cool. And then how long ago did this start? You said about 5.5 years?
So yeah,
so the channel is technically 6 years old. So we didn't start uploading till the fall, but we had been talking about it for a few years prior. So we had established the name and the outfit and kind of the concept was pretty formalized by this time 6 years ago. So and then really started uploading in the fall. So 5.5 years.
Yeah, and we took a year-long break and didn't upload a single video for an entire year. That was in like 2019 to 2020. And so that break kind of, we've been going at this our own pace this whole time, because as a mom, and doing this together, we're like, okay, like we're both in the business of it or whatever. So we are like, when we both commit to something, it affects the rest of, the family. So we're like, we have to be very careful and sensitive about that, and moving at a good, a healthy pace for us to not burn out, for one, to not overdo it with our children and miss opportunities and them growing and all this. So we've really just had to like do this in our own way. And so, we're back at it and loving it. So
that's awesome. I want to talk about the bike side of things, because you've been working on some projects with the bikes, but did both of you grow up around BMX, or is that something that's newer to you? Or
so I'll talk about kind of how I tricked my family into getting into BMX.
It's totally
so Breck, not so much. I definitely grew up around bikes, like dirt bikes. I rode a lot of trail riding growing up, and then I raced maybe like half a season as a kid. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, so Emerald Valley BMX was a track we went to all the time. It was public, it was open track, and so I maybe dropped the gate a handful of times as a kid. That being said, I've spent like a crazy amount of time at that track because it was public. We would just go, we'd ride from our house, we'd go jump, like there were dirt jumps in the back. So that was my upbringing, was just like kind of the backyard, schoolyard, like dirt jumps, always building jumps. The city is always finding our little lots and like dozing them down. And then a lot of time on the dirt bike, on the motorcycle. So and so when we had kids, I also played a bunch of team sports. And so as I got older, like bikes kind of were like secondary, they were transportation at that point. And so when we had kids, we both kind of had a shared perspective of team sports and kind of the challenges of navigating, potential drama in team sports and getting kids maybe too early in team sports, especially like nowadays. It's like we put our oldest into soccer when he was 6 or 7, and it's like he was decent, and it was a non-competitive league, but within that first year of people, like other parents, seeing that he had some skill, they were all trying to recruit him to like their premier league stuff, and we're like, this is like,
what is happening? Like,
so it's just really overwhelming, and
we got to get him ready for college.
Exactly right. So we kind of quickly made a decision, like, all right, we don't want to go down that path right now. They're not old enough to, like, our kids aren't old enough to make that decision. So it's like, that's a hard decision, and I'm not knocking that for parents that do, but it definitely was difficult for us, especially so like Breck grew up playing soccer and running track. So, but yeah, from the BMX side, we started traveling full time, and we've always been on bikes.
Yeah.
We lived in the downtown Portland area, Vancouver specifically across the river. So not like actually Portland, but it was still downtown.
This part of the story is crucial because living downtown, we had one car, and he worked downtown, and so he would sometimes take the car, and then I would take the kids with 4 children. We were like wanting to go around town or go meet up or grab the car from him, and I taught the kids how to ride bikes. At the time it was just Miles on a balance bike, and then I had the double stroller with the other 3, and then but it was like we every day would walk around downtown on those sidewalks with bikes, and so they started to learn how to ride bikes.
Yeah,
and then,
their bike skills like progress pretty quickly that way.
Every day, yeah.
Yep. And then Portland has, a biking scene. It's definitely not BMX culture, but it's road and mountain biking. So we kind of like started to get in the kids like around that. We would go to some friends, mountain bike races. We took the kids to a couple like kids little races where they get number plates and they do a little like lap in the grass or something. So,
Yeah.
So that was the extent until we hit the road full time in 2019 actually. I had already kind of been like I don't know, manipulating them with like YouTube videos about like pros, not necessarily in the racing scene, but the dirt jump world and like trick stuff that I knew. So I'd be like, wow, isn't this cool, guys?
So cool.
Yeah. So
absolutely what happened.
Yeah. And then I started building like a dirt jumper with my son. And that was kind of a big moment because then we started identifying like pump tracks. So pump tracks was kind of our first like step into the like bringing it in scene. So
he turned a specialized hot rock into the sickest dirt jumper, and that was like a game changer for Miles at 6 years old.
Yep. And then COVID, everyone's building jumps in their backyard again, and it was like it felt like my childhood. So we were building jumps everywhere. We were traveling full time, but we were like building jumps everywhere, and it was like this is like my childhood on steroids, and I'm doing it for my kids. So so fast forward all the way to we ended up getting off the road because of COVID, and we landed in Port Angeles, Washington. Breck, her parents and or her dad and family kind of grew up in that area, and so it's out in the woods, and we were like, you know what, we don't know what COVID's going to bring, so we're going to go ahead and like we got a long-term rental, and we hung it out there. And the rental house that we got was in a pretty sweet location, and it happened to be like less than a mile away from the Lincoln Park BMX. So we would make our way, we would drive out of our house and go out to the woods to go ride mountain bikes or like jump trails and stuff. And we kept like noticing as we drive out, it's like it's COVID, but like there's still like a lot of riders showing up to the track.
The airport, at night, and the lights were on, and there were a ton of people at the track, and we were like, dude, that is a party over there. Like, we need to check that out. So
we pushed it off. It's kind of a funny story. There's a lot of pieces that came together to finally get us to the track. My uncle knew we were into biking, and he happened to have this like old red line that lying around, and so we were visiting him down in Eugene one time, and he was like, hey, you want a bike? And we're like, oh sure, I guess. So he gave us this old red line race bike. It was a micro, and we were like okay, or it was just mini. And then so we had this bike, and then we knew about the track, so we finally, our oldest Miles was finally like, oh yeah, maybe I'll try it out. So we just like random, we didn't know anybody, we showed up to the track, and we walked in with this like red line.
It was older, rusty. It was great.
So this is the kicker, and this is what has made us so passionate about BMX. The second we show up, everybody was so welcoming. Immediately, and I don't even remember, honestly, I didn't know Sean, our track operator, or like we didn't know anybody at the time, so I couldn't even tell you other than the one kid. They grabbed a teenager, and they put a teenager in charge of our son, and they said, he's going to teach your kid, and he's going to ride with him all day. And like that was game over for us. We were like, we're in. Dude, we love this community. We love that they're like from the second we showed up, they like took our family, they took our son.
Super cool expert teenager just grab hold of your son and be like, hey buddy, I'm going to show you how, and just roll down the gate, halfway, work his way to the top of it. And there's like tons of other kids practicing and stuff, but for this kid to like just really, and then to recruit other little friends. Hey guys, he's new. Let's talk. Let's show him how. And it was like boom. So we observed that as the rest of our family from the side, and then we were like, okay, we're all gonna try next week. Our brave soldier went out and
Yeah.
did it on his own that first one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the like perfect storm of all these things coming together, and here we are at Lincoln Park, like enjoying this party and like being welcomed into it. Like, come on, you guys, come on in. This will be fun.
Yeah.
So
that is super cool. So I want to add something as a result of that for people listening and tracks, because the dynamic is right there, and I've known this for a really long time, having worked with teenagers and having worked with a lot of kids in the same in similar capacities. Like if you can take care of the kid, and if the kid it feels connected, you win the parent. And that's
100%.
exactly what they did. Is they took care
100%.
of the kid. They made that kid that was there at the track, that student, made your kid feel like the only person there, made them feel special, made them feel wanted, made them feel valued. And in return, mom and dad, who are the ones with the money, are coming back and going, no, we have to be here because they care about my son. They're
100%.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And he was a cool kid. Like it wasn't just like we got the it was like he was a fast expert rider who wins races, and he was I think he was 16 at the time, and that's something that is truly a make or break for a family that's on the fringe. I would say we weren't completely new to the sport as a whole, but we definitely were on the fringe, and it took one interaction with the track for us to go, oh, we're in, right?
Yeah.
And it was literally that moment we were like, it was like, oh, that's cool, we're watching from the outside, we need to check it out sometime. That one experience, and we've been foot on the gas since. Literally it's been 3 years now, and it's just been we haven't lifted our foot.
Well, and the thing too is like after that first week, we come back the second week, and now we're heading over to the bike shop, or the bike shed to get loaner bikes for the rest of us. And boom, we're met with more volunteers that are super friendly and helpful, and they want to get us fitted and like ready to go. And again, it was like this thing that if you feel intimidated about it, to have these volunteers that just see the family dynamics of it, and just come in and grab you and be like, oh, let's hook you up. Like, we got you,
You're saying grab you. No one physically grabbed
no.
you.
I feel like I was just, what the heck?
They just threw us into the bed.
They just threw us in there.
Yeah. It was like a foam pit. They just shoved us in, and we couldn't
get out. They shoved you in there. You're like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, but there's the reality of I think what Sean and the volunteer crew did, and in reflection, it's like they eliminated that friction and the confusion for new families. And it really was what you said. It was like, you get the kid excited, take care of the kid. And I think a lot of times, maybe what I've maybe witnessed is people that grow up in the sport sometimes like forget that or miss that a little bit, and they don't see the value of like this new fresh family coming in. And especially too, there's a lot of new families that aren't just going to be taking up track space. I think sometimes there's the nervousness of it just being like, oh, these are going to be people crashing all over, ruining our stuff or whatever. It's like, for us, it's like our boys progress to expert really fast. We're winning races and pushing other kids out there. And I get out and race, and I can give the teenagers a run for their money, and like there's a reality of like,
you crash really hard doing it.
Yeah. I've put I've donated a lot of skin to that.
Okay. Yeah, you really have. Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. But I guess the point I'm making is there's a lot of diversity of people on the fringe, and I think it sometimes feels that maybe there's people that are like, these are people that are never going to be in the sport. But I think I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of people that are looking for something, and the more people we talk to as we travel, especially, it's like there's so many people that grew up in the sport, and they're just waiting for an invitation back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's so true.
And maybe they had the reason why they're not in it is because they had a falling out, and so they're waiting for the door to open up. They're waiting for someone to grab them and say like, hey, come on in. We're big proponents for our story, and we can communicate that to the people or the track operators and the volunteers as we travel, is like, hey, we need to take care of these people on the fringe. So that's a big mission of ours. Like I said, we haven't taken our foot off the pedal, and now we're like actively trying to help other people recruit the the us in
Yeah.
all these other cities. So
Well, and one of the things, so the track that we're referring to is I did an episode 12 with Sean Coleman. So he's the
yeah,
track operator in Port Angeles, and as you know, you guys have traveled around, and so I would assume you've been to other tracks, correct?
yep, yep,
Okay, not every track is as incredible as that.
yeah,
And you know that, like you have tracks that are like you go into and it is really difficult to even feel wanted. It
yeah,
is really difficult to even feel like you it's really interesting because having been at so many tracks, 'cause I think it was in the low to mid 20s track number of tracks that I went to last year. And
yeah,
the number of tracks, it is surprising to me the number of tracks that I come into and I know what I'm doing. I'm confident, but they don't feel like I should be there. Like
yeah,
it's kind of this outside perspective of like, well, who are you? And people
yeah,
that don't talk to you. And it's amazing to me how many tracks I can go to. And I would assume that you've had similar experiences where how many tracks you have to go to in order to or that you go to and end up feeling like, well, like, am I an inconvenience? Am I,
yeah.
is it okay for me to be here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I'll say I agree with that. I think what we're learning and we're realizing as traveling, we've been to, I don't know, probably 40 plus tracks in our
Yeah.
BMX
Right.
experience as a
Right.
whole. Um, the one thing that stands out to me the most is at the core, there are people that truly care and they pour their life into bringing this experience to people. And so I don't think that it's as much maybe that they don't want you around. It's maybe more they don't know how to
You
communicate
know,
and how to bring that in.
yeah, and the hard part too is like when you get, families and parents that get super into it and they kind of lose sight of that beginner novice stage. It's like that track operator, I feel for them because sometimes they kind of get sucked into that culture of driven drive, have the best riders, do the best, and they kind of like lose. So honestly, like a huge part of me doing these like Brecky Breck clinics for the younger kids at these tracks is to like remind them, it's like let's have an hour where the track operators and their volunteers are observing the joy on these kids' faces and they're falling over, or some of them even bring their bikes with training wheels, and I'm like, good luck with that. But they figure it out,
Running
and then
right side up there, like,
and I apologize.
all the parents are walking on the side.
I try with my mic on. I'm like, hey, everybody, we can stay off the side of the track, because I know the hard work that it takes to like maintain, especially those tracks that aren't glued or they're not finished. And so I look at the track operator and I'm like, I am so sorry, but like I really hope that some of these parents convert to volunteers. But it's that reminder of like, look at why we're doing this. Look at the start of this, Let's bring in the life and the joy back to it. Because not only are these tracks maybe not even welcoming, but the track operators are burning out. They're exhausted. They're fighting an uphill battle. They get some people in their group that kind of think they're too cool for school and they're not even volunteering anymore. They just want their kid to ride. They can throw money at it all day. There's just a whole host of issues that you can run into. But what I have realized by every single track operator that we have met with so far, I mean, they've welcomed the toddler Brecky Breck onto their track. So when we've gone there, they're like, I'm excited for this newfound energy or joy that you're bringing here. And they are really yearning for that. And I can see it. I mean, almost every track operator is like a contractor or like a really hardworking person who has like, has an actual job and they're doing this, or they, their kids have been in the sport. So it's like the commitment level of their life to the sport is so inspiring. But just to like bring them back and hopefully help encourage their community to see, hey, don't forget those little guys, don't forget those beginners, even those big kids, those 9-year-olds that are showing up and they just learned how to ride a bike. Don't make them feel unwelcome, because that is the next generation of BMX. And these kids need a place to belong. So any issues that you're running up, you're running against in staging, I ended up volunteering a lot in staging at Lincoln Park. And what I realized was these kids that are kind of mouthing off or grabbing each other or getting aggressive, I was like, every bully's got a bully, bud. So let's hash this out. Like what's going on here? You're like, this isn't working for me. Okay. But I was trying to be like friendly and loving and be like, dude, I know that you've had a hard day, but let's just ride together and, get it out there. So, but again, sorry, I just derailed, but I think that's so important is like seeing the value that these track operators and these volunteers pour into it. But yeah, it is tricky finding volunteers and help to come along and make that track a party. That's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. So to transition from there into what you had mentioned, you've done some Brecky Breck events at the track, and Sean mentioned that in his episode of when you inundated the track with kids on push bikes, which is just absolutely incredible. So where did that idea come from, and then how has it progressed to where it's at now?
Yeah.
Because,
So
yeah.
yeah. No, it's again, it's kind of the perfect storm of everything coming together. And I'll maybe start by like we were riding at the track, and it had been a year. We'd ridden for like a year now, so we're all into it. I think we had finally purchased our first BMX bike, aside from that one red line from my uncle. So
which again, the some of the friends at the track were like, oh, we'll work together and build you a bike like for your son and like get into it,
Yeah.
So it was super cool.
So we had taken a break, I think, that year that we even started. So we weren't even filming anything for Brecky Breck at that time. And then we started filming again. We were like, hey, we should film an episode about BMX. And so our channel was super small still at the time. And I think maybe it had been like in the middle of like kind of taking off a little bit. And we reached out to Sean, and we didn't know him that well at that time.
I messaged him on Facebook, and I was like, hey, like, we're a family that have kind of been coming to the track, but I have a children's channel. I wondered if you'd let me film a YouTube episode there. And he didn't really understand fully what was going on, but he was like, sure. So he unlocked the gate like an hour before practice, and I come in and dress like Brecky Breck, and he was just like, whoa. So he kind of stepped to the side.
What have I done?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he was saying. So yeah, so then we just like boom, I had learned enough about it personally to where we just went through and filmed that episode.
Yeah, and it definitely was like we showed up and we just relied on kind of what we knew.
Yeah.
And so
what we had learned, I should say.
So it wasn't like the most planned out or the most like prepared episode in terms of
hold up. I that night before I was definitely thinking through like what are the key things that I want to like.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is
now there's a brain behind Brecky Breck.
The point I'm trying to make is I look back at that episode and I realized that it's like it was just kind of raw and beautiful for what it is. That episode took off like that it like started getting a ton of views. It had a lot of engagement, and then it like quickly jumped to our most viewed video, which was super cool because this is like our family. We'd been in it for maybe a year and a half at this point now, and it was like the thing that our family's really getting into is almost being rewarded even in the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
And so it was something that was really fun for us to see, and almost gave us like an extra incentive to like, oh, maybe there is demand from an audience that isn't being touched yet in this or grabbed yet in this in what we do. And so that's where we started to realize we had this beautiful experience with BMX and coming to the track and like our family coming into that, and we can talk all day long about team sports versus BMX, and like our family all gets to ride together, and there's we don't have to sit on the bleachers while one kid's out in left field picking daisies, like that's all of the stuff I think that everyone in the industry already understands and gets. That's the recruiting conversation, obviously. But the other side for us is like, all right, now we get to kind of see this new angle, and for us it was like there's like get them younger, like our kids. If someone would have recruited us when our kids were on those balance bikes, like we would have probably gladly come into the sport. It took us moving to Port Angeles and living close to the track for us to see the party and go, oh, we want to do that. So it's like, what other tools are available for the industry to be able to start to get in front of and engage with families, earlier, to where it doesn't have to be a literal drive-by for them to like see, right? And so for us, using the channel and kind of using the influence of what Brecky Breck has grown to, started to become a reality of like, all right, there's kind of something here. And again, there's a demand. Obviously, it wasn't like a flop of a video. We now have our whole channels kind of almost being drugged behind the BMX episode.
Yeah.
So, so I think it has like 24 million views on it now, which is insane. And daily is our top performer. So,
Yep.
It's super cool to kind of have that as the like showcase of the channel, and for our family to be into the sport.
Yeah, so we were in Port Angeles for 3.5 years, and we were like, for a while after a couple years, we were kind of toying with the idea of going on tour like as Brecky Breck, because issues we were running into about filming even outside of biking content was there's not a whole lot going on in that area, and to go to like film bigger things, more exciting things, sometimes we'd have to take trips down to Seattle area and go film for the day, and that's pretty taxing. But beyond that, I was like, man, we missed traveling, and so we thought, well, what better way to meet people outside of ourselves and our community than to host events. And so when we thought about hosting events, we thought about, well, let's do clinics, like little balance bike clinics. It gives our kids the opportunity to ride at a lot of different tracks, because they're kind of getting older now and my content isn't as exciting for them. But if I can, be as a mom, be like, hey guys, we're going to go on tour, and like, there's an incentive for you, like you get to ride. And also to get families that maybe their kids don't know how to ride a bike, or they've wanted to try BMX, but they've been scared of it because it's kind of intimidating when you see that big, nice track, And so I was like, if we can invite some of our fans or just people in the community and draw them out, it gives me the opportunity to meet them without having a lot of like pressure to put on a show or perform. It's like, dude, you and your bike are going to have a great time today, and I get to be here to help you facilitate that, And those parents just are sweating up a storm when we're running around those tracks. Oh man, when you're chasing your little toddler and stuff.
Yeah.
But
at this moment, I'm going to interrupt our episode, our current interview, briefly to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsors that have backed us financially in this project, in our mission, and give them a huge thank you. So at our gold level, we have Luminex Neon and Marketing Breakthrough. At our silver level, we have Sound Cedar Lumber and Bicycle Thieves. And at our bronze level, we have Pro Start Gates and Justin Shepard, Title Examiner. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for backing us. If you are looking for help with any project that you're working on, if you're looking for some cool things to do, go ahead and check out the links to their websites in our description and go ahead and visit them, show them some love. We are so appreciative for their support. And if you are interested in getting involved in a local track, helping out, or sponsoring a local track, sponsoring the BMX Breakthrough project as a whole, please reach out at j@bmxbreakthrough.com. You can also go to our website and find out some of the needs of tracks and some of the things that we are working on at bmxbreakthrough.com. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Let's dive back into this conversation.
Before all that, we did toddler clinics at Lincoln Park. So this is even before the tour concept and stuff. So we had been a part of Lincoln Park BMX. We both volunteered.
Yep.
I ran set up the live stream and got all like marketing. We built the website, and like we're doing, Breck was editing reels, and like also doing the staging, and we
concessions, just kind of help wherever we needed it.
We were addicted on every level, so it was like we started just realizing we're spending a lot of time here, and this is a lot of fun, and it truly was. Like, we talk about this all the time. Like, Sean as a track operator is not the most like flamboyant, like vocal leader, but he really is good at opening the doors for people to come in and provide what they know how to do. And that's exactly what he did for us. It was like, we have these skills, and he's like, awesome, like do whatever you want with those skills. And he's really done that, I think, with a lot of different people. And he's a great enabler for value at the track. And I think that's something that, you know, a lot of times in a leader, we look for someone that's like leading the charge and out, you know, speaking and kind of vocal about everything, but he's been really good about exactly.
Yes,
There's a
yes.
doing element and enabling. Like if someone else can do something, he's not personally trying to do it all.
Yeah.
And he's really quick
He's
to
good
like
at
hand off.
empowering people.
Yep.
Yes.
So if he realizes even if maybe he could do something better, he's been really good at doing that. So he did that quickly for us.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, and a lot of the volunteers you'll meet at Lincoln Park, they feel valued and appreciated for what they're good at, and that's why they stick around and keep volunteering.
Yep.
Because they can, like, you know, Sean and the whole crew, honestly, like all of the volunteers there, and his wife Laura, everybody is super good at encouraging each other in their skill set. And then when you have a new idea and you bring it to the table, Sean is like, you got to be careful, because if you say something, he'll be like, fine, do it. Like, let's see it. You know, what do you need?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and you're like, oh man. So
Dangerous.
it's dangerous, but it's a beautiful thing. And yeah, so I love that. And I think that's a huge element to being a leader, of like seeing value in people, empowering them to walk in that, and then also encouraging the people around you and keeping them in volunteer. But that starts with you showing up to the track and pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into it too.
What I was going to say with that was, I think, and we see this as we're traveling too, I think there's a lot of skills waiting to be tapped into at all these tracks.
Yeah.
There's families that are actively part of the BMX community that haven't brought their skills yet. And it's maybe not because they don't want to, but because the door isn't open for that. And I don't know I think there's a disconnect between track operators. A lot of times put on the burden on themselves, but really it ends up being inflicted, the pressure they carry, because there's other people that are willing to do that. So there's a reality of asking. There's I think there's value in asking. There's a value in letting go of roles as well.
Yes,
and I think that's something that we got to watch. We were very fortunate enough. Our first experience was something that was a very positive experience. So as we travel, we're realizing, hey, this is something that be really cool for us to be able to kind of point to that and show the value of, like, hey, that's where we came from. We're a product of Sean opening the door and saying, yes, do it, and the live stream from our Gold Cup and our state finals was a product of Sean saying, awesome, yeah, do it. Like, he gave me the green light to come in and do it the way, I knew how to do it. And it wasn't that he already had this vision and you can only do it if you do it this way. It was like, and I'm sure there's a number of things that I did, even in the things that, that I set up for him, that he wasn't maybe like, wasn't his exact preference.
I remember you taking over the music one day and it wasn't 80s jams anymore, and he's like, I come up to the tower and I look at Sean and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know who picked this, like, it wasn't me, Sean. So
we could probably have a whole podcast about like the subtleties of the beauty of Sean's leadership. So I'm really glad that you got to interview him and you did have that podcast.
Well, and here's the thing. So Sean will be listening to this, and Sean, I know this is making you so uncomfortable.
I know, dude, I know.
We do that on purpose.
because he does not want to be talked about in this way. And he got recognized for something recently, and I said, well, apparently you're just getting too awesome, and like, people are actually it's going to be really hard to stay invisible when you keep being that awesome.
Right.
And that's the thing. And when I had a conversation with him, and I was kind of fishing for that, but Sean is so I'll say others centric, and he doesn't want that spotlight. And so he won't say it, but what you're saying is exactly what I suspected. And it's like an empowering leadership, and the leader's not intended to do everything. But he, like, that's not his role. His role is to oversee that team, and a track operator, their role is to oversee that team. And there's always times, and Sean said that too, is that there have been times when he has to step in and he has to do things. Every track operator will, have to, will have to take out the trash. They'll have to announce, they'll have to run.
And he's the first one to do all that stuff still. I think when, and even with the digital stuff that we were setting up, he would come to my office and learn the website. He wanted to learn how to make posts. Like, so it wasn't simply that he was just like, sweet, it's off my plate. It was, it really was. He wanted to bring other people
Super
into it, but
teachable leader.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he also really wanted to learn it, and he was, he's always the first one at the track, the last one to leave. There's some stragglers of, the OGs that've been there forever that'll come, like water, and like it definitely it's a village. So
yeah, it is absolutely.
yeah, so it's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's cool to hear your perspective as well, because because that's what it takes, is giving somebody with that skill and that drive, that motivation, and for track operators that are listening to this, because I get messages from quite a few of them. But like, if you have marketing people on your team and they want to do something, let them do something. If you've got people that are creative and have, I mean, everybody's creative, but if you have people that are good at content, if you have photographers, like, empower them. And I feel like this could easily, we don't have enough time, clearly, for our conversations, but this could clearly turn into like ways to encourage those different team members. But back to talking about Brecky Breck, because we'll stop making Sean uncomfortable. Is so you guys are traveling right now. Obviously, right now, I love this, that your office is set up in a cargo trailer with a bunch of bikes.
Don't look too close.
Yeah.
We threw everything in last time, right?
It's super cool, very exciting, and so like, so as you travel around, are you bringing bikes to those events, and then kids coming in without bikes as well?
Yeah. So we have this trailer. We travel with our Class C motorhome in this trailer. We have a fleet of 20 balanced bikes, and 20 helmets from Fly Racing, and so we bring 20 and 20. And then a lot of times we'll, kind of inquire with the track and be like, all right, what do you have? Like, what can we be flexible with? So generally we've been 5 and under balanced bike focus, but that is less about whether or not they're on pedals or not, and more about like we're trying to get the kids that are new, right? So often we have older siblings that show up that are like 7 or 8 that are like, I kind of want to try.
Well, they show up like, we're here for my little sibling, and then we're like, hey, we have an extra bike. And our kids, who, some of them are bigger, and they're jumping on our balance bikes, just like, huge bodies just cruising down the track. And so I'm like, you guys can try it if you want, like, you don't have to. But then some of the tracks are like, oh, here, I have a micro, that you could borrow, whatever, for these older siblings or juniors, whatever, and they jump on them and they try them out, and they love it. So, and then you end up hooking the whole family right there.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's our goal, and we have tomorrow, actually, we'll be at Okehili, and it was the same thing. We had some people asking, they're like, hey, my 3-year-old is great at riding, they pedal all the time and stuff, and initially, our marketing and stuff says balance bike too, or whatever, but it's like, no, we want the younger kids. And really the biggest thing is like, this is dedicated time for the younger kids, and there's no intimidation, there's no, like, you can come walk the track, right? One of the biggest things I think we do to help with that too is like at the end of the clinic, we sit down on the finish line, and Breck,
and I read a book. I read Peyton Ridenour's A to Z, BMX style. And that right there, because we do that at the halfway point, actually, because sometimes we'll start out the clinic with, I got cones set up kind of on the side in the grass or whatever, in the gravel. We'll do some exercises just to get them comfortable with me. And then we'll bring them out to the track on their bikes, and I'll say, okay, we're just going to go nice and easy, one little lap, half track, bring them back. How was that? Was that fun? And let's do it again. They're just, and then they start ripping and roaring. You get kids that are a little intimidated, some parents that are a little intimidated, some parents that are now sweating because they've been chasing their kid all around. So we'll rein them back in, read that story. And at that time, that's like a solid 10 minutes of just sitting at the finish line. You'll notice parents just kind of looking around, taking it in. And
we invite the track operator to like come out during that time too, because a lot of times you get parents with questions about like, all right, so how do I get involved? And so what's been cool is most of the time during our clinics, the track operator is 100% busy talking, answering questions for parents. And it's like, man, this is that you couldn't ask for a better like situation for new families coming in and learning about the track. Like a lot of times I think tracks try to do like, the expos and the fairs, and they had to, go set up a booth or something. It's like, we're kind of the opposite. It's almost a I wouldn't say circus, but we're like bringing
feels
it,
like
we're
that.
bringing, you know, that crowd to the track. And I think that's something that the base of the clinic truly is an educational element. Breck takes them up to the gate and they watch the gate, they listen to the gate. She talks about
And
like
have them put their bikes upside down at the bottom, and then we'll walk up just so they know, like, we're not going down this today, but we're just going to listen to it, and have them push the, we'll have the track operator push the button, and
it might be loud. So like some of them are
so
loud, some are quiet. Let's listen,
let's
you know.
see if they're loud or quiet, let it
That's
drop.
awesome.
Yep.
The parents love that, we'll do it 3 or 4 times, and then I'll have somebody go down, and I'll point out them balancing on their pedals and how we get to that, but we don't start out like that,
Yep.
and the whole thing, just bring it right back down.
Yep. And then back to half track.
Yep.
And so it's
And
like,
then
all
they
right,
ride the rest
keep
of the
going.
time.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So yeah, it's been really cool. And I think, we're definitely like still adjusting things small, here and there as we go. And this is one thing too. I've kind of like started the licensed coach process maybe like 5 times now. So that's my goal, is to eventually like, especially by the time we get off the road. I really enjoyed this community. And even in Port Angeles, I had a group we called Alpha Scouts, and it was just kind of a neighborhood biking group that I would just text all the parents and say, hey, we're going to the pump track for the day, let's go ride. And it was just kind of all this, I believe, my biking experience growing up was beneficial to my upbringing. It was something that helped form me. I wasn't super into the track community, but there's something about just getting on a bike and riding with your friends. And so if there's a healthy environment for that, I think that's what these tracks have the opportunity to do for a lot of kids. And I'm a really big proponent of pump tracks. I think pump tracks, especially nowadays, almost represent the public side or the open side of a BMX track. And so you can go out anytime on your own time and ride a pump track and get familiar and comfortable. And then, a lot of tracks are going private or closing the doors outside of simply their events. And so by having experience at a pump track, it's I think there's a natural progression to being comfortable kind of riding your bike and, pumping and going over obstacles or whatever. So yeah, so it's fun. So but yeah, the format of the channel or the events is something that we're really finding our groove with now that we're kind of almost halfway done with the tour. So
No, almost,
cool.
not even.
I want to point out a couple things. So one, in episode 5, I did an interview with Mike Carruth, who was the co-founder of BMX League with Donnie Robinson. And one of the things that he said in the episode that I absolutely love, and I've gone back to time and time again, is like, there are no other sports there might be a couple others, but like really there are very few other sports where you show up on the day that you get introduced to an event and you fully participate in that event.
Yeah.
So your events, like you're talking, we're not going to go down the starting hill. We're not going to use the starting gate. We're going to look. You can walk around the track. You can get to know it. And I shared an experience I had of bringing a new family to the track. And honestly, like, even though I wasn't anticipating riding, how overwhelming it kind of was for me as somebody who understood, and then trying to walk a 6-year-old who was intimidated through the experience. And like, okay, well, let's, or he was 6 or 7, and like, okay, let's jump on the track at half track. Oh my gosh, there's, these, 13 that are running by. And so the fact that you can actually experience that track, for the parents to come in and experience that track. And although 20 toddlers introduces a whole new level of chaos, it is still
you're welcome, see you later.
Exactly.
It's still a calmer experience, and it's so advantageous. So there's that. And then also you mentioned Peyton Ridenhour's A to Z, BMX style, and I bought that book for my kids at Grands of 22, and I thought, okay, like they'll love this. So for Christmas of 22, I gave it to them, and all last year, like we traveled last year, almost, I don't know, 8 months or so, and it was in the trailer, and they would share it between their bunks. And it was so funny because neither one of them could read entirely, but they had memorized the book, and they would go through and they would read it to each other. And basically both of them would read it to each other every night. So I still have it, and it's completely torn up, and it's just a hammered book. And they got to meet Peyton last May. We stopped by on our way through at Legacy Nationals. We weren't riding, but they got to take a picture with Peanut, and they were so excited to meet her. And then when we've been in Tulsa, is now every time they see Hardesty, one of them, like the most recent time we were driving by, and my 5-year-old son goes, "Ashlyn, that's Peanut's track." And they just
she lives there.
She lives there. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just love her. So like that, so that book, and for any parents that are listening, or even tracks, like I think that's such a great book for kids because it's
100%.
just
It
fun.
is, yeah.
It gives them pictures to look at. It gives them, they can hunt for Rocket in every photo.
Yeah.
There's so many dynamics. And anyway, it's so cool to watch my kids have just a love and a desire for that book.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
I
and I
love it.
think that exactly to that point, and this is what we're realizing too, as we're introducing this book to, parents all over the country now, is like, there's a huge opportunity, I think, for the sport as a whole to recognize this demand or this desire. I think there's a hunger that wasn't as apparent a number of years ago, that something like, Peyton releasing this book is starting to even shed light on. Whereas before, when this, and I don't know if this is true, but it's like when this book was a concept, like I don't know how many other people in the industry would have been like, oh yeah, like write a book, okay, whatever. But it's like there is a demand and a hunger for this, and I think there's a real pathway into the sport that is being missed, and that's something that we recognize like pretty explicitly, from our perspective, and for the work we do. We're like, man, there's this whole world of families and content, and obviously from the marketing side, we could speak about that all day long as well. Like there's just a lot of areas I think that the sport has the opportunity to grow, and that's something that we're trying to just challenge from our perspective, and do it in a way that's leading by example. So by coming along and hosting these free clinics, it's like, hey, we'll recruit them, we're spending money on ads, we're bringing families out to the track, and we want to just like, I would say over 50% of the time they're saying, yeah, let's do this, but I don't know, we'll see. And by the time we're done with the clinic, they're like, this was awesome, like I didn't realize the value of this type of engagement. And not that most of the time if they're having us out, they believe in us enough to have us out. But
we've had a couple that I've been like, please, I have people in that area that want to come out to an event, like just open the track.
And then we've had some that just have just like a hard no. We've been on conversations with them, they just don't, it just goes way over their head, and they don't get it, and maybe they're going through other stuff too, so not to make it all about us, but it definitely is. It's frustrating when you do run into that wall, and I can imagine a lot of people in the industry have their version of that wall in sport. And so to be able to just have the support of USA BMX is huge. And to I think if the industry as a whole, if we can start just really celebrating all the different angles that people are taking to help grow the sport, that's why I love this podcast and what you're doing too. It's like, it's not just like talking about the pros and the glory days, and like when we hit the track, we we make sure the sweat covers our whole jersey or whatever. It's like there's other elements of the sport that are necessary in tandem with that other side. I think the sport doesn't exist without the draw of the pros, and without the lure of kind of the coolness factor, but it has to have the other side as well. And I said, and without that balance, I think it becomes something that is too linear and ends up having a lot of holes in terms of what it can be. And that's where you have these seasons with a lot of tracks where they go through a good season that just has this falling out, and it's like, I don't know what happened, we just don't get the support we used to get, and it's like, well, there's a whole new pool of people that
Yeah,
are waiting to
demographic.
come in and
Yeah.
support this track, but
Yeah.
they're just not being, reached, or they don't even know that this is a thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well,
I think that's what we're trying to do. So
well, those experts, like for example, the kid that took your kid under his wing
yeah,
and taught him, the track doesn't grow if we market to him, if
yeah,
because he's already there.
yeah,
Hmm.
He's already in the seat. He's already got the bike. Like,
yep,
at some point, like, so the industry still kind of grows with him, because he'll want some parts. But the
yeah,
reality is the local bike shop probably doesn't benefit a whole lot from him.
right,
The track, they benefit on a weekly basis, but not on a growth basis.
yep,
You have a natural attrition rate. So families
mhm,
move away, families
yep.
get burnt out, kids get older, they get cars,
Yep.
they get
They get into mountain
they,
biking.
they get interested in dating. Like, there's all
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
yep,
so there's natural attrition. And I can't remember what the exact numbers were, but like we talked about it in episode 5 with Mike Ruth. But like the
yeah,
like level of attrition is that if your attrition rate is even 5%, and I think a lot of times it's like 7, but if your attrition rate is 5%, if you're not growing at 6%, then you're actually just
yep,
staying the same.
yep.
um
Yeah.
and
Or run backwards.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, we brought in, we had 100 riders, and we brought in 3 this year. Okay, but we actually lost 6. So,
Yeah,
so if we market, and that's why we started focusing so much on just the fun side, because a lot of
yeah,
times that novice level is having way more fun.
yeah,
And not that intermediate and expert doesn't have fun, but it's so exciting. My son just loves. I've not pushed my kids to get out of novice. My son can come across the line in a gate of 8. He can come across in 7th, and he just has, every time he sees my wife taking pictures, he has the biggest grin on his face,
I
ear to
love that.
ear. And then he comes across the line. He'll come across the line in 7th or 8th place. Dad, did I win? And I'm like, sure did, buddy. You got this.
You did.
And
You won my heart, little dude.
and
Oh, I love that.
and I remember I was talking to actually the owner of Supercross, Bill Ryan, in California last year, and we were having a conversation. I told him that, and he's like, "Yeah," and he goes, "At some point, you'll probably have to deal with the fact that some kid tells him, 'No, you lost,' and he asks you, 'Dad, did I lose?' And Bill goes, 'No,' that's when you respond with, 'No, he did.'" And
yeah. That's awesome.
and I love that. But the reality is, like, they're having so much fun. So if we can focus on, the 10 and under, or even really just
Yeah,
like focus on those new riders. If you can get
yeah,
those riders, if for you guys focusing on the striders, and then naturally you're picking up stragglers along the way of
yeah,
their older siblings, and that's how the track grows. And it can be tough. Like, if you are a track that's struggling with motos and struggling with volunteers and struggling, it's like, oh man, it is a lot of work, let's be honest.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
this is where I would say the responsibility, I think, the longer we're in the community, in the BMX scene, the more I'm realizing the responsibility is not on just the track operator. I think the families that have committed to BMX, we all share that responsibility, because without the growth of the sport, then we all have to go find something else to do. And I think what I'm realizing too is a lot of times that's, who ends up being the track operators are those parents that just like are around long enough.
Mhm.
And so my challenge a lot of times is to the parents of the younger experts, who they're pushing them. They've got their Instagram accounts. They're signing them up for all the Barry Nobles, clinics. Your responsibility is not just to push your kid, but I would like to challenge those families and parents to get those kids involved in the new rider clinics.
Mhm.
Drop your bike and come push a strider up a hill. And that's something that we've tried to do with our clinic. Is like, hey, if you have a couple of people that come, demonstrate the gait, but it's not just showing off your skill. Drop your bike and come, like, share a smile with a kid and share in that joy. So it's not just that it's not just your kid smiling in seventh and then the kid who won, and then those are the two. I think getting them to appreciate each other is another big part of that as
Such a
well.
powerful thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to even our experience. Was the 16-year-old, he might have been 17-year-old at the time. He's no longer in the sport. So to your point, the attrition got him doing bigger and better things in his world. Yeah, he's like into awesome stuff. But he wasn't too cool to take he was 8 or 7-year-old at the time, and put him under his wing and share that experience. And he ended up being kind of a mentor in mountain biking, and he would see him at the pump track, and it ended up being more than just, oh, my dad told me I have to go take you under my wing for this thing, so I guess I'll do my little thing. It was like, the parents won. The parents did their job and raised a kid that knew how to lead other kids. And I think that's the thing that, as a dad, I want to show my kids how to serve, how to lead. And I think that's something that it's not just the track operator recruiting, we got Brecky Breck, we checked it off the list, so now the toddlers will show up. It's like, no, it's the whole community. And
I think the other part to that too is the families, like when you make it a fun time, we had so many friends. I mean, we're at the track Thursday, Tuesday, Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Sunday. And, I had a lot of my mom friends outside of BMX that were like, hey, we want to have a dinner date, like when can we make it happen? You guys are always so busy. And I'm like, you can come bring a pizza out to the BMX track and we can just hang out on the side. And they would like, okay, if that's the only way we're going to see the Johnsons, like, I guess we'll do it. But it was like, if you just take the intimidation and, oh, my kid's got to focus and win, let's just go out and have fun together, you end up bringing more families out to the track. I had a friend, Jessica, who's like bringing out a big old crock pot, and where those moms walking to the side of the track with a crock pot, because practice is at like dinner time and kids are going to get hungry. And of course we've got all the awesome food trucks and concessions and stuff, but it's like, just make it a party and like just drop the, and obviously when you have those kids that are driven to be winners and champions, like that's inspiring for the rest of the group. And so to come alongside those parents whose kids really are thriving and are really dedicated to the sport, it's like, that's so cool. But to also bring that fun, lighthearted spirit and camaraderie of the sport is just huge.
Well, and it comes down to, I think what I was saying is like getting them to appreciate each other, right? It's not, I think what ruins the sport and what makes me upset too now, the more I get into it, is the parents that are like, you better push your way and get your practices in. You go to nationals.
It's like, have a slice of pizza, my boy. Okay, let's just simmer down.
Well, and I get physically upset, and I like, I'm not naturally one that like reverts to like fighting, but like there's points where like I'll hear the way that parents are like encouraging their kids, and I'm like, I'm so discouraged by that. And I think that's the responsibility. I think it really comes down to the parents. Those parents need this industry to last. They're putting all their identity in it. Like, you need this more than anybody. Like,
yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
So if you're not seeing the full picture and realizing that, like, if you're teaching your kid to bully other kids so he can get extra practices in because he needs to get his starts down so he can hang with Wyatt Christensen or whatever. So it's like, I love, we know the Christensens, and like their perspective is awesome. And Wyatt is like, their whole family is so awesome. And it's funny because there's so many people that like, them being from our track, that they'll come out and they'll like, I want to be like them, but it's like they miss the whole side of like, just have fun, like be here, be existent, like you can still put in the work, but like seeing the value for the whole picture, I think, is important. And it's funny to see, like, I don't know, we've taken lessons from people like David Christensen. We've taken lessons from these people that like they could still be the best at the sport and still have heart for the community. And I think that what happens is you get these people that put their identity in the results, and they can only see that. That's where you really start to get it.
They're not riding the coattails of their kids, they're like just here to like love and support them for wherever they're at. And that's huge. Those parents that come out to the track and do that and are helping another kid fix their bike while their kid's out there riding, or like helping the new kids check in, it's like that right there is the love of the sport.
Yeah. Well, I think there's the difference, and I've determined there's the line between the kid who is pushing their parents and then the parents that are pushing the kid. And ultimately what I've said for a while now is like, long term, I want 20, 30 years, I want my kid to love their bike. I mean, racing is awesome. I really enjoy it, but it's not that I want my kid to love racing for the rest of their life. I want them to enjoy the freedom of their bike. I want them to learn the lessons from their bike and from racing and build
Mhm.
those character traits. And so you've got those you were talking about is like being the best. Okay, but is that parents pushing the kid, or is that kid pushing the parent? And when it's
Mhm.
parent pushing the kid and living vicariously and trying to push them into that, is I think that's where we see a lot more burnout versus you have that kid that's like, man, I want to be the best, and for the parent to come alongside and support that and say, all right,
Mhm.
do what we can do.
And you can
um,
push in the midst of that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it's classified as one or the other. There's definitely, I think there's a value in, um, you know, coaching and you know, challenging and pushing through hard
Yeah,
times.
you know your kid, and you know, like, if they're just having a bad day but they've got that champion
Yeah.
mentality, then yeah, push them through that
But if
moment.
you're the
But
only
yeah.
thing holding them up, it's
Yeah.
like they're not standing on
I'm
their own.
to be here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and that's, I guess I say all that, or even bringing any of that up is just realizing it's not just, a lot of times we talk about the track operators, you got to do this, you got to do that, open the doors, blah, blah, blah. I think the responsibility falls on the shoulders of everybody in the sport. I think
Mhm.
we all share responsibility in appreciating what other people are bringing to the table. And that's something that, even we went to Grands, this is our first Grands experience this year. And it's just really encouraging to see, there kind of was this like there's people that get it and people that don't get it, right? And you kind of share this experience with the people that get it. They're like, oh man, love what you're doing. I don't I don't get the bow or the glasses or something, but we're so excited that you're here for the sport, right? And it was like there was this overwhelming sense of like welcomeness to like what we were doing, and people were just excited about it. And then there's the other side of like, what the heck are you doing? Get out of here! Like you're in my way, or like this other side that was like, I'm here for me only. And it's like it was the contrast that it's like, all right, we need more people that even if you don't understand completely, or it doesn't even apply to you, a new rider clinic may not apply to you or your family directly, but think about what would it mean to your track operator for you to take your expert nag plate holder child down to the new rider clinic without their bike to like help and support and encourage, and even and maybe even being a source of like encouragement in a positive way, not look what I've done, but like look what's possible in the sport, and I'm here to help and support and appreciate.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I definitely want to figure out how to help encourage parents more, and encourage people to kind of look across the aisle a little bit and appreciate all elements of the sport. Similar to any other sport. I've been appreciating the Savannah Bananas lately. I don't know if you heard about the Savannah
Oh
Bananas.
man, that is
Um,
inspiration.
that's inspiration. And what Jesse, the owner and kind of creator of this whole banana ball world, has done is like basically looked at what's missing in the sport of baseball that gets people excited about it, and how can we just focus on that. And I think banana ball doesn't exist without the MLB, but because of the MLB, banana ball gets to be something so special. And I think I look at BMX and I look at other sports and I look at other industries in general and say, what can we learn from that? How can we start to appreciate the stuff that initially, a pro in baseball will look at some guy walking up to the plate in stilts and say, what is this circus? But Jesse, the creator of Banana Ball, is like, we are a circus. Like he's kind of admitting it and saying that's we're bringing this joy to the sport that maybe takes away from someone who is trying to be a Hall of Famer or something initially, if they were trying to train next to the guy in stilts. But there's a beauty in that balance, and I think that's something that I think we can even accomplish on a micro level at the track level, and finding as track operators, how do you encourage those two worlds to interact and not just tolerate each other and get out of the way of a strider, or not intimidate them all the way, but like, talk to the strider, or like show up, or have ways of creating interactions together. So
Yeah, because having fun with it, having the personality and being able to create that fun dynamic and not take yourself too seriously, and Breck, I was going to ask you about because to that, obviously, wearing a bow on your head, you identify yourself really quickly, and so like being in that setting, what is that like? Like, is there? You've been doing it for a while now, so is it like initially was it intimidating, or is it intimidating now? Is it uncomfortable, or
No, I love it. I love it. I think the thing too is like when you have kids that show up that know who I am, I can tell right off the cuff, they'll come running at me like we've been best friends for years. And I'm like, I don't know who this little kid is. But when he runs right into your arms, he's like, Brecky, Breck, and like gives me a hug. And just that like that innocence and that joy and that light that I'm trying to bring to families through a screen, when you get to see that in real life, the impact that you've had, it changes everything. And beyond that, like even when we film a lot, I feel like we're kind of the only character type creators that are out filming. Like we'll go to like a market. I filmed at a farmer's market, or I filmed out in public, even at Grand's, filming. And I think for me, it's like, I because I'm wearing a costume, essentially, I feel like that kind of gives me the right of way to do whatever I'm about to do. But because it's just like I'm like, hey, I want to be joy filled, and I want to show these kids these real life in the world experiences. So fully accepting that, and honestly, like Brecky Breck and like who I am as a character is truly in my heart of hearts who I want to be nonstop. I have my moments as a mom where I'm upset and I'm frustrated, and I was in a grocery store at one point. I was pushing my kids in the cart, and I was like, sit down right now, sit down, like you need to stop, it's dangerous, sit down. This mom comes over, she's like, oh my gosh, are you Brecky Breck? And I was like, oh man, I was like, yes, I am. And I'm just like reprimanding my children right there. But she's like, no, like, I love it. Like, I love what you do. And I was like, it was a great reminder for me of like, okay, like I'm human. But I'm still like, we had a great conversation, and our kid's a huge fan and all this. And it was amazing. But it's like just accepting, like, okay, what elements of who I am can I really tap into and let, shine, and not be afraid to, be embarrassed by it or all of that. And I think, as our kids age, I was always wondering, Miles, my oldest, who's now 11, I'm like, is he gonna think, oh man, my mom is embarrassing? But it's like after he watches these kids, we just filmed with a monster truck yesterday, and this little boy ran up to me and he goes, Breck's here. He's here to ride this monster truck. It's at a farm in the middle of Florida, and he's here to ride it. But he sees me, and my son Miles was standing right behind me and watched that whole thing. And as we walked away from that experience, he's like, Mom, it's so cool to watch you be Brecky Breck. And I was like, thank you so much, because I do get that vulnerability of, yeah, that reprimanding part of that motherhood, the hard days, and then the joy and the light, or whatever, the fun that I appear to be all the time on camera. There's this balance that I internally struggle with. But for my own children to see my real heart for kids and families is like a huge thing for me. And I think, when it comes to the BMX scene, I mean, a lot of people now assume, so do you just do bike content? Because that's all they see on, social. Because I'm going, I've got a jersey now, and I've like established this like real thing. And I'm like, no, I don't only do bike content, but that's been a huge outlet for me and my family. So we're tapping into it, and I'm riding that wave, and I'm loving it. And it's getting people outside together as a family. And like that right there, at the end of the day, I'm all about that family time. You only get a certain amount of time with your kids, and then they're off, So if
Yeah.
you can really learn how to soak that up with them, and that means maybe getting on that BMX track and riding on the Father's Day races or the Mother's Day races, and just showing your kid that you're here to be with them and do this with them, that's so huge.
Well,
So.
and I'll add quickly, with the BMX clinics that we do with Brecky Breck, we're not filming it. Like I'm grabbing some social stuff, but it's not about the channel. It's about like this time with the kids. And I think it's fun because there's fans of Brecky Breck that show up and they're just all about it from the get-go. But then you get the other crowd that's like, all right, we wanted to check out the track, but like, what's this like dancing person doing here?
Yeah.
And
not insane. Like
I know, I'm just saying that you can watch the process. And what's fun is throughout the event, and it's, we've been able to watch it, pretty consistently now. There's like a change in like receptiveness to what it's like. oh, I get what you're doing.
Well,
You're here for the kids.
mhm.
You're for us. Like, even me during, my role during the clinics is like helping support Breck and helping support the admin stuff.
Yeah.
But also like I'm getting down and helping the kids. Like I'm helping to encourage the parents, like, oh, do this. Like,
You
here,
know,
let me help with your helmet or whatever. And so
yeah.
kind of that leading by example, I think is
The
important for the
biggest
kids to
thing
see.
too is like at the end of the clinics, a lot of families will come up to me and be like, "This was so great. You're awesome." But what spoke to me the most was your children out here pushing my kid, up this track. And when the parents are getting tapped out, our kids are stepping in and trying to help them. And some of the track operators' kids are coming out pushing these kids. And I think for the parent, like for them to step back and to see, there are good kids in the world that just really truly have a heart to serve others. That's so big. So I think, it takes us parents trying to model that and doing everything I can. And you can teach your kid all day long, but until you're willing to get out there and just lead by example and show all that hard work, we look at those track operators and their kids are out there alongside their dad and mom, like, open the concession stand
Maybe
and do this thing.
reluctantly, but they're
Yeah,
there.
but they're there,
Come on,
they're trying, and I'm like, okay, I know that even if they go through their awkward teenage years or whatever and they come out on the other, and this is for me, I now look back at my parents and I go, oh man, the things that they instilled in my life when I got to just observe them being a leader and stepping into a role has like lasted forever for me. And so to give that back to my children and to hopefully exemplify for others is such a big thing. So yeah, I think people get more than they bargain for when they come to these clinics, because it's like you see, okay, Brecky Breck's there, but it's like, no, like all the volunteers and my kids and Kylan, we're all here to like love you and see you where you're at. And the other piece to that too is like um the kids being nervous, like when I speak to them as Brecky Breck, and just I'm a mom of four, I've grown up leading preschools and all these other things, so it's like I know how to talk to kids and get them, so I'll talk about the color of their bike and their helmet, and I love your Paw Patrol shirt, and like, you want to come follow me, let's go around these cones on our bikes, this is how we stride. It's like when the parents that are kind of reluctant at the end, they make that transformation by the end because they see like, oh wow, like I met their kid where they're at. And sometimes they even need that reminder to do that with their own children, and I think that's something that's really cool. So I feel incredibly honored, and I'm constantly just having to like, there's so much insecurities and vulnerabilities that I have inside my head that I don't share all the time. And so, but for me to just step back and go, okay, like, I believe in God, and I'm like, hey God, like just use me where you will. And I'll do my best and I'll have my off days, but I'm here to love people, and that's the end of it. That's the goal. So,
And I think that comes down to also, you're not taking yourself so seriously to let those insecurities become a problem, and to get in the way of the interaction that you can have with those kids. And maybe it's some of these kids, I have to assume that there are kids that have come out to your clinics that have been afraid of their bike, but because they know you as a character, then they're coming out. And now, okay, well, if Brecky Breck is willing to be on a bike, then maybe I should give it a shot. And we know
yeah,
how kids work, and all of a sudden they identify. And and so, like, for other people is there's some people for that are at the local tracks up near Port Angeles, but out in Everett and Peninsula Indoor. And there's one rider in particular that I always think of, and Scott Merrick, who will dress up as Santa or dress up as the Easter Bunny, or he'll dress up, like for Halloween, he dressed up in a construction outfit, and it was so cool. And so the amount of barrier that breaks down for a child to be like, Santa, I mean, my kids were like, they didn't know who it was. And
yeah.
and
Santa's out
so
here riding bikes. Yeah,
exactly, like Santa's here, and Santa gave us candy. And then I don't know, I think Oliver had dropped his mini candy cane at Peninsula Indoor, and he dropped it in the dirt and he started crying, and I said, that's okay, go ask for another one. And he goes, but I don't know. And I said, it's okay, I'm sure that Santa will give you another one. And it was like, and it was magical for him, is that they
yeah,
had this experience. And in the same way, is I saw recent pictures of you with the bow on your helmet and with your jersey, and being willing to not take yourself so seriously, to go, it's about the fun. We're gonna have fun.
Yeah.
We're gonna go out, and it's for the kids. We're gonna
Yep.
invest into
Well, the
them.
other thing to that too is like when you see something exciting, like you go to a monster truck show and you see this monster truck, it's like even an adult, you're like, that is so cool. But if you respond like, oh my god, you know, people are gonna be like, geez, simmer down. But with the outfit, I'm like, dude, I get to like respond in that childlike thing. You know, I meet these people that are, you know, operating excavators, and like, you're a kid superhero, you know, these cool things. So even with bikes, it's like, dude, this is fun. Like, this is so cool to race and to even see these dads and moms out there racing. And like, you know, it's like at the end of the day, when they feel encouraged and inspired themselves as a 35 or 45, 65-year-old out there on the track, and they're just like, man, that was awesome. I had a great race. I'm like, that gives me so much joy. And to see them living in that authentic joy, you know, I mean, we had one guy at our track who's like in his 60s, and he's like, I'm going for state one and stuff, but he was just getting into it. He's out there helping kids get bikes. He's sponsoring 1,000 kids. You know, it was so cool because you just like, man, like the joy and just to like live in that authentically. I think that's something that as we grow, we do get away from that. You know, you get, you know, you get that adult mentality of like, okay, like, you know, you lose sight of these things that really do bring pure joy. And so to tap back into that again, it goes into the BMX and, you know, getting those beginners out there and seeing the joy on their face and be like, remember that? Do you remember when you felt that when you got on your bike for the first time? Like, how do you get that experience back, you know?
Well, and the same parents that have a hard time with that, they were the kids that lost their joy riding,
Yeah.
or they were the kids that said, but you didn't win, you know, and so someone took their joy.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, there's a reality of like, all right, how do we bring that back? How do we
Yeah.
encourage you know, parents to like let their kids experience that and also encourage it in others too. And so you know, the outfit definitely is kind of that first step. It's like, okay, there's something going on here, you know. It's like you know, even the people that don't know, even like when we go out and film something, like there's like, okay, you know, you get this kind of like, what the heck. But there's like, over the time they're like, okay, I get it, you know. And not everybody dances along per se, but there is a element of like, I feel like generally most people get to see kind of the results of that. And again, I think that's, this clinic as a whole is an opportunity for all of these you know, it's kind of the perfect storm of you know, positive peer pressure, the lack of intimidation, the encouragement of joy, and also the encouragement to the parents as well. Like, come on out on the track, walk the track with your kid, you know, be here.
Yeah, and to push the parents to see, hey, like, you know, as a parent, you get scared when your kid's about to crash. I don't know if they can do that yet. We've never tried it, you know. But to let them see, hey, your 2-year-old is capable of doing hard things. And yeah, they fall, but they'll get back up. Like, they're okay.
They're
That's
pretty
huge
durable.
too. Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, that's cool.
Man, that's incredible. I'm so thankful to be able to have a conversation with both of you, and to be able to talk about the love and the joy of BMX, and just bringing kids into the sport. And you know, I think the advantage for tracks, to be able to hear some of your experiences as well. And I'm just thankful. I mean, I realized what time it was, and realized that we we could probably just keep talking.
Yeah.
I know.
But but I'm so thankful for your time, and thank you for what you're doing for the sport and for kids. And thanks for having a conversation with me.
Yeah, well, thank you. I love seeing the joy that you have for the sport, and to like bring in, you know, I loved all the questions that you've been asking, even Sean and the other podcasters I've listened to. It's like, you know, yeah, how do you do what you do? You know, I think that's huge, because hearing people's heart and, you know, everything behind what you see, and you know, it's like, it's a big deal. So I really value what you're doing, Jay, and I thank you for the opportunity.
And I concur. Also, being able to apply like practical resources and steps to, you know, people in the industry, I think is helpful too. And I think, you know, seeing people like you working with other people in the industry, even we have a number of sponsors that have gotten behind us, and companies that are just like, okay, we love what you're doing, and how can we support? And it's been really fun. Fly racing has been awesome, and has just like whatever we need, they've been like, all right, we want to keep supporting what you're doing. This is so cool. Even Quentin at Pro Start was like, take a gate. So we have a gate that we bring out to the
Grants. He literally packed it up, was like, here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we do. So that's actually part of our clinic, is like we take them up to the big gate, and it's like, oh, that's kind of intimidating, but we actually have a little gate. So we get the kids on the little single star gate, and it's really cool.
Right next to our tent, and they just run that all day while the other ones are riding. It's great.
Yeah, so it's just fun. I think that's what I guess I was referring to at Grants, is like there's two camps of people. There's the people that I'm here for me, get out of my way, and then there's the group of people that are like, I love this sport so much, and I'm super excited when other people get excited about it, and I don't care if you look goofy to me, or I don't understand it, or it's to a demographic that doesn't relate to me. I'm excited, and it's so fun. There were so many, like, I think guys in their 60s and 70s riding around these, the bigger 29ers, or just like cruising, and it's obvious that maybe they're not racing, but they just love this environment. They love the sport, and they were all like coming up to Breck for pictures, and I feel like we had more 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds taking
not
pictures.
In a creepy way, though. It was like,
they were still excited. So
it was an honor, because maybe their grandkids have gotten into it too, because of them being able to show this love of the sport that they have,
or they understand it. They realize that like, to get the kids excited about the sport, it takes someone with a lot of joy, and I think what those older riders, a lot of times the ones that make it to that point that still love riding, they've figured out how to give up on the competition side, or not give up, but put that as the second seater, and the joy is first. And so when they get to see someone else experiencing true joy, I think of Curious George out at our track. We have, there's so many people that have just like, I've learned to bring joy into this, and this is the only thing that really matters in the sport at the end of the day. So if we can figure out how to encourage that in each other, then I think we'll all win. So.
That's
anyway,
awesome.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And have an incredible day. We'll definitely need to connect again at some point, but thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.